very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all my listeners. Well, including our lovely guest speaker, Keith Greer. Well, the person seems to be most handsome, young, and energetic is none other than Keith. Keith, so nice of you for being with us. So nice of
Dinesh,
you. Thank you so
thank you
much.
so much for inviting me into this conversation. I'm looking so forward to it.
And if you permit me, I have got a small introduction about you, and soon after that we will be jumping on your questions because I have got number of questions that my listeners want to ask you. Well, Kate is a transformative executive coach and family therapist with over 44 years of experience, recognized by the International Coach Federation. Kate empowers individuals and organizations to forge deep connections through innovative neuroscience-based strategies. His mission is to inspire authentic leadership, and today he will share insight that promise to enrich both your professional and personal lives. Very rare personalities I have seen that who tape the audience in the field of personal life as well as the professional life. Well, once again, a very warm welcome to you, Kate. And if you permit me, let me jump to the question. Here is
Sounds
the
good.
first question, which goes like this. Kate, what inspired your journey into this coaching therapy? Kate, platform is yours. Please go ahead.
So, Dinesh, I was blessed very early in life, in my teen years, in getting in touch with and spending some time with an assortment of amazing helping people, therapists, counselors, who just from their work, from their interaction with me, their just how they carried themselves through the world. I just found it inspiring, absolutely inspiring. And I'll back up even a little bit further. I was one of those children in elementary school who always had on his report card, Keith socializes too much. So I know from the beginning of time, I was fascinated with people. I was kind of intuitive about people. I loved being in conversation with people. So even then, there was indication that this was going to be my direction professionally. But then I met these helping people, drove home even more so for me that this is what I want to do. And then, so the first half of my career was in therapy. I was a family therapist for many
Oh,
years. And then the transition from that to coaching really came about because what attracted me to family therapy from some other work I had been doing prior to that was that family therapy really has a viewpoint that the family therapist is not an expert on the family. You're an expert
right.
on how to facilitate family systems therapy. That resonated with me. And then when I started reading about coaching, which took that concept even further, that the coach does not have answers for people, the coach doesn't know what's best for
Correct.
people. That it just resonated so deeply with me.
Oh, what a lovely journey that you had. Well, you talk about shifting your career, especially to the coaching. Then, before we go for the next questions, please, can you please share one lively example that happened in your life where you coach someone and he or she got a result which was beyond your expectation?
Yeah. So I'm gonna share an organizational story, if I may.
Mhm.
There is a not-for-profit that I have been working with for a number of years in my area. When I met the executive director and started working with her, this organization does amazing things in our community. Wonderful, wonderful people, but had a bit of a history of turnover. It had a bit of a history of leaders not having some difficult conversations that they needed to have. It has
Mm-hmm.
some history of some of the folks in leadership sometimes having difficulty setting boundaries around what they expected from people. And that took away a little bit from its mission and took away a bit from the enjoyment some of the people who were employed there get from their work. Over the last 2 years, I've worked with the executive director, who is a phenomenal woman, who then made me available to her entire leadership team, who then made a decision that anyone in their organization that steps into even the smallest of leadership roles, they get to work with me. And so over the last couple of years, we have worked a lot on how to have difficult conversations, how to create trust and safety, how to lead in a way that puts an emphasis on strength and capacity, how to make sure people across the organization feel appreciated and valued. And the work has been wonderful for me. And the feedback I've gotten from the organization has been phenomenal. And they are moving in a much more productive, quite honestly, happier direction right now. So it's just been an absolute pleasure to be a part of their organization.
Great. Well, Keith, you told so much of things. Can you please elaborate neuroscience? What is that?
So neuroscience, you're going to find pieces of neuroscience all through the coaching world these days. And so neuroscience does a couple of things for me, I think, and for my clients. The first thing it does is it takes concepts like how we interact with each other, conversations we have with each other, maybe even times where we struggle with each other. And it takes the conversation away from maybe more traditional social sciencey explanations that some people, because I've had this said to me, well, Keith, that's kind of, touchy-feely. That's not what this is about. And it grounds it in the scientific world, that everything about how we interact with each other, how we perceive each other, the habits and strategies and assumptions that we bring to conversation and relationships with each other are based in neuroscience. They're based in everything from fight flight, how certain people interact with us in a way that causes us to feel threatened, or hopefully the opposite, feel a great deal of trust and safety. It gives us explanation as to why certain people in our lives we have more difficulty interacting with, that's not a coincidence. That's often based in, again, how our brain perceives them. This is where sometimes the family therapist in me comes back in. It's also based on some of our past life experiences with maybe somebody who reminds me of this person. So it allows me to walk into a room like I do work in the tech world. It allows me to walk into a room with a bunch of engineers and approach our work around leadership and the creation of trust and safety in the world of leadership from a much more scientific place. And that seems to land with people.
Keith, you told so much of things. And being a coach, you are working with neuroscience. And does it work on a mass or it works on individual only? Especially your
Boy,
neuroscience.
great question. So I would say yes to both. It starts with individuals. What I find is in my work with individual clients, the neuroscience just makes sense. Like, it's rather impossible to argue with it. When we start talking about exactly what goes on in the brain and how certain conversational patterns and strategies and habits land in the part of our brain that causes us to feel a bit of a threat. I'm now in fight flight, or allows us to be in the front part of our brain where I'm doing much clearer thinking. It's hard to argue with that. Like, that's just science. So if you extrapolate from that, when I work within an organization or with teams, if everyone in the room is willing to buy in, to get curious about what goes on when we interact with each other. So here's I guess another example. If I know that if two people come to me and say, Keith, we attempted to have this conversation, do some problem solving, it didn't go well, we walked away angry at each other. I know that if I walked up to either one of those people as they were walking away and they were angry, and I asked them, Give me your best definition right now of why that conversation didn't go well. I know, Dinesh, that most people would say to me, well, Keith, the other person's at fault. And what neuroscience does is it allows me to come back to them and, with respect and a bit of sense of humor, say, not the most scientific explanation. There's a much better explanation. And based on that explanation, strategies that we can now put into place that increase the chances your future conversations, either individually, a couple, a team, an organization, are going to be more productive and more worth your time.
If it is so, then one question offbeat: how can I apply on my wife?
All right, you ready for the answer, Dinesh? I have an answer for you. All right, so here's the answer I give when anybody asks me something like that, like, how can I be better with this person? This is not the be all and end all of answers. It's more complex than this, but it works. The part of communication that most people struggle with the most is listening. It's not what comes out of our mouth. It's listening. It's quieting our head, quieting our mind. It's maybe being aware of the assumptions we bring into certain conversations with people, our history. I don't know about you, Dinesh. I've been married for over 40 years. There's a lot of history there. When people ask, if there was one thing I could change about how I communicate with people, what would the most powerful change be without knowing anything further about any of the people involved? I always say, listen better.
Lovely, lovely. I fully agree with you. And believe me, I have tried for a number of time and I could succeed. And on behalf of you, I will definitely say, yes, that's the most powerful. Very correct, very correct. Wow. Kate, as per this, your specialty, let us go little dip into this, that what are the key elements of your conversationally intelligent leadership program? How you work on this?
So there's a whole bunch to it. I'll highlight a couple of different pieces. So first of all, as we've already talked about, it's built on a foundation of this modality called conversational intelligence, which looks at the neurochemical underpinnings of how certain conversational strategies or habits land in other people's ears and brains and cause them to either say, I trust you, or I perceive you as threat. And I don't. And so what that allows me to do right from the beginning with my clients is my clients and I can sit down and we can actually deconstruct their specific conversational patterns, the habits they use, how they tend to approach different conversations, and look through this lens of neuroscience of what are the chances these ways of being that you bring to conversation are going to work for you and work for the other person that you're in the conversation with. Because at the end of the day, what I'm looking for in conversation is, are both people invested in win-win? Do both people want the conversation to go well? So that's the first part of this work that I do with folks. Now, within that, there's a concept that I created called having a conversation about the conversation. So all conversations are governed by an assortment of rules and experiences and assumptions and bias. The problem is, most of the time, we never identify what all of that is. So it's there impacting our conversation, but we don't shine a light on it. And what a conversation about the conversation is I can teach people how to, in your interaction with someone, before you talk about whatever it is you have to talk about, the topic that needs to be discussed, what do you want to agree upon in how you're. You there? Oh, there we go. What does trust and safety look like, sound like, and feel like for both of you? Can we reach some agreement on that? In that conversation, we run into this concept called assuming shared meaning. So all the words that are coming out of your mouth and my mouth right now are wrapped in meaning based on our life experience. Can we have a bit of a discussion about, in a way, so that we agree on the meaning attached to certain terms? So like if you and I both were talking about, we want to feel respected by each other. Well, your concept of respect and my concept of respect might have some overlap, but it might have some difference. So we want to be really specific about that. That allows us to feel a great deal more trust and a whole lot more safe in our conversations. That's in there. I bring into our work some concepts from the modality of conversational interviewing. From motivational interviewing. So one of the things I often hear from newer leaders is, I've been told I'm supposed to motivate my team. Well, the latest research I look at in the world of motivation would say it's impossible to motivate another human being. Motivation is an internal experience. What a leader can do is help people on their team identify what they are most motivated to do. So we can look at some of the skills and strategies around motivational interviewing. Then I bring in some things from family systems of just asking people to get curious. What kinds of conversations in general are most challenging for you? Conflict, somebody being angry with you. Is it more with a male, with a female? So what I do in my work is I look at how we come at conversations from all these different angles, so that by the time people sit down and find themselves in these conversations, especially in leadership, they have thought through what they need to bring to the conversation and what they would ask from the other person. That, again, increases the chances that both people will walk away feeling the conversation was productive.
Yes, you are right, but I got a question that especially when you are in an organization and the boss is there, naturally, boss will be having his own bossism. So under those circumstances, you being an employee, how you will convince your boss how
So
he
that
should
is
act?
yeah, that's a challenging question. Very challenging question, because don't know if you have a boss who is going to be on board with this. And the reality, the reality is many people in leadership to this day, they're the boss. They're the final word. They say what they want to say in the way they want to say it. It is really challenging if you have one of those kinds of folks. Now, here's how I might coach a client in how they could try to address this with the boss. Most people in the working world would say, we don't have a whole lot of time. Time is of the essence, and we don't want conversation to be a waste of time. So this is a little vulnerable making for the person approaching their boss, but I've worked with folks around this who will attempt very respectfully to approach their boss at another time to talk about some ways of being that would help them hear their boss better, would help them feel more productive. And so it's not about being manipulative. You do want to be truthful and honest around the person in front of you. But I also know that, right, from the boss's perspective, if you have a boss who's just coming at you or yelling at you or judging you, that conversation is going nowhere. It's absolutely going nowhere. The other thing I sometimes talk with folks about, if they feel like, Keith, I could never do that with my boss, is, are there other people within your organization that you could talk with safely and with a level of trust about, to maybe get their take on how you might attempt to address this with the person that you report to? But that is, I do not have magic words for that one. That is a tough one, because there's no guarantee the person in the boss's seat is as invested in productive conversations as the person who reports to them.
And to practice this, is there any book that you would like to recommend, especially
Yeah, there's two
dealing with?
books. Yeah, there's two books that I'd highly recommend. So one book is, it's called Conversational Intelligence by Judith Glaser. Judith is the person who created this modality Sadly, she passed away about 8 years ago. She was an executive coach around the world. It's a wonderful book. She has several books filled with neuroscience, but they don't read like a neuroscience journal. They're very, very approachable. The other book that I adore is called More Time to Think by Nancy Klein. So it is also filled with a lot of neuroscience. And what that author did is she looked at what, let's say you and I, if we were interacting with each other, we were work together. What do we need to offer each other as conversational partners, as thinking partners, that would allow us to interact in a way that leaves us both doing our best thinking? Now, here's the bottom line on best thinking. To do best thinking, I need to perceive you as trusting and safe. Because if I perceive you as threat, then I'm in the back of my brain, the home of emotion. And when I'm there, I'm a bit cut off from the front part of my brain where I do really good thinking. I love her book. There are 10 concepts that she outlines in the book and goes into a bit more detail, that if people could bring this to each other, we would support each other in doing our best thinking.
Great. Yes, people would love to read them. But before I proceed, there are so many information, details, experience are there, no doubt. But can you please give one piece of advice, whether he's an employee or he's a boss or he's a businessman or he's a professional, whosoever he or she is, one piece of advice that one must have in mind beside listening?
So I said it a moment ago. You would think this should be the case, but but it's just not. And that is, do I enter conversation, especially in the workplace? Let me take that back. Not just in the workplace, anywhere in our lives with important people. Do I enter conversation with a true, authentic win-win mentality? That I want this conversation to go right and well and productively for both of us. If it's not win-win, it could simply be, I want to be right. And if I'm right, you're wrong. And I run into this all the time in the world of leadership. And in fact, in the conversational intelligence world, we actually call it the addiction to being right. People who have such a need to be right. We've all been at a board table with that person who's banging on the table, I'm right, you're wrong. That's not win-win. And that is also a conversational strategy that closes down the rest of the room. So if someone were to ask that, what's the one thing? Can you enter conversation just as invested in the other person getting what they need from the conversation as you are invested in what you're looking for?
Wow. Yes, it seems I one should, at least I will try to implement it. Well, Keith, I was one of the senior executive in an organization, and there I found that always most of the my colleagues or even the employees also, they think that I know everything. So what is that misconcept that people think that there is no need of getting any detail or coaching or learning from the outside person like you? What would be your answer to them?
So I have been in this conversation. It's a bit of a challenging conversation at times with people in leadership who maybe struggle a bit being asked to be self-aware, to think about and evaluate their own practice. What I often ask people who maybe have a bit of that tendency is, you tell me, what's your experience when you present that way? What is your experience with what happens with the rest of the people in the room? Because my experience is people close down. People will not take a risk and speak up. They just won't. Or now this, I'm going to be very honest with you, Dinesh. This is incredibly provocative. I do not suggest that anybody pulls this out of their pocket unless you are working with someone that you have a phenomenal relationship with. So I have said this at times to people in leadership who get very stuck in I'm right. And I will say to them, all right, whatever was the last example when they were right and everyone else was wrong, I will ask them, is there any evidence in the known universe that your right is the only right? Because the answer to that is always no. It's no, there isn't any. Now, I will say this, Dinesh, there is nobody on the face of the earth who feels his feelings, his thoughts, his assumptions, his opinions deeper than I do. I feel them deeply. But no matter how deeply I feel them, I know if I take a second to think about it, my way of viewing something is not the only way. It's not the only way. And so where that becomes really relevant in the business world is any kind of brainstorming, any kind of innovation where you're asking a team to innovate. For that team to do their best, every single person in that room has to feel I can throw out my opinion, my thought, my perspective. It will be listened to, it will be assessed, it will be honored, it will be respected. And then together we will co-create and come up with something together. But if there's that person or a couple of people in the room where it's my way or the highway, that's not going to happen.
Wow, lovely. Well, Kath, I have so many questions to be asked, and the way you described, discussed, and presented your thoughts, I couldn't interrupt you to stop you. It was really lovely, lovely. I like each and every suggestion that you made, each and every step that you have covered. They are really marvelous, and I'm sure that all the listeners who are listening now or who will be listening will definitely be benefited, not in their organizations, but in their personal life too. Well, Kate, time doesn't stop here. But before we leave, can you please give one piece of advice that one must think of, apply in day-to-day life? What it would be, please.
To their daily life,
Mhm.
yeah, curious. Can just go through the world being curious. Right? When we practice authentic curiosity, we tend to not get stuck in thinking we know what's best.
Mhm.
We are open to the thoughts and perspectives of others. We ask really good open-ended questions because we want to know more. It is I do my best to practice that every single day, to just be curious about myself, about other people, about the world around me. And I hope that the feedback from people who know me would say it keeps me, at the very least, it keeps me humble.
You're very correct. Yes, you are very correct. That is the perhaps inner force that keeps you moving, moving, moving ahead. And that's
Yes.
nothing but the curiosity one must have. Perfect, very correct. Well, finally, before I end, I have few sentences which I would love to describe, and they are, Kate, a big, big, big thank you to you for sharing your invaluable insights and experiences with us today. Your commitment to fostering the authentic leadership and deep connections really have inspired us. Let's take these lessons to heart and strive for the transformation in our professional as well as personal life, because that is the most important, because no life is perfect or complete if he or she is not taking care in professional side as well as personal side. Well, on behalf of this platform, I sincerely pray Almighty God to give you all strength, all wisdom, time, money, energy, and everything, so that the way you have explained, it was really marvelous. Please keep on doing it. And with sincere request, when we call you next time, please spare some time for us so that we can spread this unbelievable. For me, it is really unbelievable. I was thinking that, oh, I know everything, but no, it is not, unless and until person like you who tells with the authority. This is it, really. So please do spare time for us as and when we call you. So nice of you for being with us. Hope to see you once again. Once again, we say namaste to you. Means we bow down to your intelligent and intellect. So nice
Dinesh,
of
thank
you.
you so much for inviting me into this wonderful conversation. Thoroughly appreciate it.
We are honored. Thank you. Thank you so much, Keith. It was one.
Together we are global speakers talk.